that weren't there originally. And the photograph, I'm going to tell the court that the photograph that the state intends to offer, I believe they will be arguing, shows Mr. Rittenhouse doing something with his firearm. If it is not the same as the original and colors were added to that, that is a distortion of what in fact the original photograph was. It should not be admitted because it's not relevant if he can't testify, and there's been no appropriate foundation that in fact it should be admitted if he can't testify that it didn't add colors, that colors that originally weren't there still aren't there. And I think under the circumstances, based on the evidence that you've heard today, you should not admit those photographs because they are not what I would consider to be mirror images of what the original photograph was.
Judge, all due respect to Your Honor, I think the defense is trying to take advantage of your lack of knowledge about technology, which you've expressed. With the defense argument, you can never have an enlarged digital picture. All of Nathan, and I understand we didn't object to them, but all of Nathan DeBruin's pictures that he brought in on his own on these prints are enlarged digital images. If the defense is now trying to argue that enlarged digital images are not reliable, I mean, it's first of all hypocritical, but second of all, this is just not the age we're in. We are in an age where software is able to enlarge and do things. And yes, this image, we believe, although blurry because of the enlargement, does show, in rebuttal to Mr. Rittenhouse's testimony, does show him pointing his gun at individuals just before Mr. Rosenbaum chases him. The defense, this is clear in the drone video. We pointed it out in the drone video. The defendant denied it. This is an enlargement of that drone video so that we can see a better picture of it. This whole canard of adding pixels and changing color is a dishonest argument, and I believe the defense knows that. Their expert used a very similar software to zoom in and edit and change things because if these things are reliable, and they are reliable, and that this is what is used by by forensic imaging, forensic scientists, it's the industry standard. So if we're going to say that no technology can be brought in, no enlarged images can ever be brought in, that is a ridiculous standard. And we've heard from two experts now about how these algorithms are used and what they do. And simply because this evidence may be not beneficial to their client, and in fact show their client is lying, they're stooping to this level to try and keep it out. And to me, I think making a dishonest argument based on a number of forensic scientists that have emailed me to discuss this issue with the Apple zooming, which I think was also a very similarly, I don't want to say dishonest, but inaccurate argument. Simply trying to keep out these enlarged or cleaned up images that show that their client is lying. He pointed a gun before Joseph Rosenbaum chased him. And this is a rebuttal. This is rebuttal evidence. This is based on someone trained in this area who uses software that is certified in this area. He's trained in this area. This is what these forensic image specialists do. And it's peer-reviewed by other forensic images, which, frankly, Dr. Black's was not. And so this is actually a much higher standard than the evidence that Dr. Black got in. I understand we didn't object. But for them to have an expert come in, use a very similar software to do similar things, and then try to pretend this is all voodoo magic is preposterous. And
well, wait a minute. A couple of things. Number one, you know, this happens sometimes. Lawyers sit there during the trial and all kinds of stuff comes in and out, and there's no objection raised. And then when there is an objection raised, the party says, well, this went on before in the trial and it was admitted. And I think, okay, but there wasn't an objection. So it was never scrutinized by the court. It just came in. That's number one. Number two, you're the proponent of the evidence. You have the burden of proof. They don't have to disprove the accuracy of this. You have to prove it. Number three, the witness was just here, and when he's asked, what does it depict in terms of whether the color is going to change or to what color, he says, I don't know. Now, this is the person who is providing your information to support your claim that it is an accurate depiction. I will tell you that I totally agree with your comment about my lack of familiarity with these concepts. Although logic, I have some logical skills, and when you start adding, if I take this piece of paper and I start drawing squares on it, and and then I decide I'm going to put it on a bigger piece of paper, and I want to expand them, but I do it by creating even more squares, and I don't know what's going to go into those other squares. I mean, this is difficult a concept for me, yes.
I
You know, the fact that I can blow something up on my phone and that it's accurate on my phone doesn't mean that the particular program used by the crime lab is doing an accurate job of increasing the size of the image.
Well, this is an accredited lab using software
What does that mean to me? What does that mean to me? What does peer-reviewed mean to me? If you haven't presented any evidence as to the science or as to the algorithm that's involved,
Judge,
no, I want to see the images.
okay.
Let's take a look. Not that my naked eye is going to be necessarily capable of making the distinction that I need to make, but you've got the burden here, so you
No, I understand.
present the images, I'll take a look at them.
Would you like them on the printed out paper, or would you like them on the screen? We have two of them marked, or we can put them on the
let's have a
screen.
look. Show me the paper.
Where's the other one?
Should be on the
Yeah, you better put them up. I can't make anything out of these at all.
Can you please put up the first exhibit?
Judge, would you like to look at them?
Actually, I've had the best success looking at this one. Now, what is this depicting?
Judge, this is an image from the drone video. It's the exact area where Mr. Rittenhouse looked and denied that that is him holding his weapon, pointing it at the Zeminskis.
Okay, now you tell me, where's Zeminski, where's the defendant,
Zeminski is off screen because we asked it to be cropped. The
I beg your pardon?
Zeminski is, I believe, off screen. The defendant is right under the sign, right in front of what would be the pole holding up the sign. And right next to him is the fire extinguisher that, as opposed to his actual testimony, is seen on the drone video gently placing on the ground. He then immediately raises up and raises his firearm and points it at the Zeminskis. The defendant denied this even after watching the drone video. This is a blown up image. Obviously it's blurry because it is blown up. but you can see the black firearm being held in his two hands, albeit it is blurry. And if you'd like to see the video where this came from, we can show that to you as well.
Let's have that up.
Have that up?
Yep.
Number 82, please.
Ryan, 82.
Judge, if you look in that area of that, it's clear on the 4K TV, which is why I believe the defense brought that in.
Clear what?
It's clear on the 4K TV, which is the one the defense brought in, but the area where that enhances is, as the video begins.
Turn it this way.
As the video begins, if you look under that sign, you will see the defendant step into view. He gently places his fire extinguisher on the ground. And then he raises up and points his weapon at the Zeminskis, who I believe you can see once this light, traffic light's out of the way. You play it, Brian? Please do it one more time, Mr. Stute. That's the defendant. Places the fire extinguisher down. He raises his weapon and points it after that. He's pointing it right now, right here. He's still pointing it at them. Do it again, please.
Back to the beginning.
He hasn't pointed at them until Mr. Rosenbaum intervened.
Do it again.
Right there, he drops it and runs.
Run it again, please.
One more time, please.
All right, now, I think what I'm going to do is allow it, and that it's subject to, the witness is going to be cross-examined in front of the jury, and they'll have to make up their own decision.
No, he will not be doing that.
Okay.
Should I clean that off and start with a new one?
Judge, I know the defense is going to rest, and then we will call a rebuttal witness. We were just made aware of a couple issues with the defendant's testimony. We believe we could potentially get a witness here this afternoon to rebut it. We were just made aware of it. So we may, at the end of this, be asking to keep rebuttal open.
So when?
Well, we're working to see if we can get a witness. It'd be a person from the Grays Lake Police Department to rebut the fact that Mr. Rittenhouse was issued a bulletproof vest by them. They indicate they did not issue him one. Also, I can't imagine we find someone, but the Arizona State or whatever university the defendant claims to be attending says he is not enrolled there and is not going to college there. I don't imagine we can get a witness for that, but we, of course, will work on that.
You can open his webpage, his student webpage. So,
Well, I'm not going to cut off their right to
yeah.
rebuttal. All right, are we ready for the jury?
Yes.
Okay. Would you come down, please? Move it, please.
Just put them right on the top of the Elmo in case they need them.
Continue.
At this time, the defense would move into exhibit 142 and 140, and we would rest.
All right, any objection to 142 and 140?
Subject to final review of 142, no.
All right, received. Did you wish to present rebuttal?
Yes, the state will call James Armstrong to the stand.
You're still under oath.
Welcome back, Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you.
You testified a few days ago about some videos from a drone footage that were entered into evidence.
Yes.
Did you do any additional work on that drone footage?
Yes, it was requested that I enhance a person near a vehicle underneath a sign.
And how did you go about doing that?
I took two different approaches. The first one, I frame averaged, which means that I selected a group of frames. From there, frame average. From there, I frame averaged those, stabilized first, then frame average. From there, went through and clarified it, which just means that with using levels, we just brightened it up, and then enlarged it.
And these practices you talked about, are these standards in the forensic imaging world?
They are, yes.
And so are these accepted practices in forensic imaging?
They are.
The software you used, is it accepted software program in forensic imaging?
Yes.
And was your work on these images did it go through the peer review process?
It went through a peer review process by another qualified analyst.
And did you write this software?
I did not write this software.
And this enlargement, does it use any kind of computer programs or systems to make the enlargement?
Yes, it uses an algorithm to enlarge that image.
And what kind of process or algorithm was used for the image with the individual under the sign?
For the image underneath the sign, the image that is on towards the left, a smart resize, and then the image on the right was bicubic.
And are these accepted procedures in forensic imaging?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
And did you write the algorithms that do these procedures?
I did not, no.
So do you know the actual specifics of how the algorithms work?
I do not, no.
But they're part of a software program that is accepted in use in forensic imaging.
Yes, that is correct.
It is, but I don't know that he's going to get the witness to grasp an answer that he wouldn't otherwise make, so the objection's overruled.
What is the software that you used?
It is called AMPed 5.
We've heard some testimony today about a software program called Input Ace. Is that a similar software program, to the best of your knowledge, to AMPed 5?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
To the best of your knowledge, did the crime lab have to choose between those two as to which software they would use?
Yes, the AMP 5 was chosen.
Were you part of that process?
I was only part of the process of making the recommendation.
Is that what you recommended?
That was my choice, yes.
Sorry?
Relevance. It's relevant.
That was my choice. Overruled.
I think you said it was your choice.
It was my recommendation to our technical unit leader It was my recommendation to our technical unit leader for my preference of software between the two.
Let's show what's in marked as States Exhibit 155. Do you recognize this?
Yes, that appears to be the report print that I created. A report print?
And this report print has two images on it?
That is correct.
And is it a true and accurate representation of the report you created?
It appears to be so, yes.
And you said there were some differences between the algorithms used on the images?
Yes, that is correct.
And what is the difference?
The difference being is that with regards to the clarification techniques on the image on the left, that was frame averaging. The image on the right, the difference being is that just a single frame was used.
And I put a piece of paper down in front of you. Do you mind flipping that over? What's the number on top of that one?
Exhibit S156.
Do you recognize that?
Yes, that is report print number 2.
And what is report print number 2?
Report print number 2 is clarified and enlarged files or images that I produced.
And where were where were you looking to enhance these images from?
We were looking to enhance the the area where 2 individuals are observed.
And so this is a different part of the drone video than the first exhibit.
That is correct.
What did you do to produce these images?
To produce these images, I just, again, clarified. So I use levels to brighten it up and then also to enlarge as well.
And all the procedures you used standard and accepted in forensic imaging?
Yes, that is correct.
Well, you actually created 6 more reports as well.
Correct, yes.
And just to not go through every one, were they all created with standards of forensic imaging?
Yes, that is correct.
You reviewed them and you know that the ones that the state's submitting are the ones that you submitted to us?
That is correct.
At this point, I would like to move all 8 into evidence and publish 155 and 156 to the jury.
All right. Well, they're admitted subject to the cross-examination.
So can I publish them?
Not yet.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Judge, I'm going to use this. Sir, you can't see this, can you?
I can partially see it.
All right, I just want to make sure the members of the jury can, okay?
Understood.
So, so in terms of your enlarging this image, from the information that's been provided to us, you did that through a bicubic interpolation program, is that right?
I provided that through a smart resize and also bicubic, depending upon the image that you're referring to.
Okay, and when you're making the image larger, you're adding pixels to that image, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. So my question to you, in terms of your work on this, is in a situation where each individual pixel, you'd agree, has a color, if there's color involved, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so if these pixels are blue, and we know from the original that these pixels are red, when you're expanding the image, you're adding pixels, correct?
You are adding pixels, yes.
You don't know, when you're adding and enlarging that and adding pixels, you don't know what color you're adding to these pixels, is that right?
I do not know the interpolation, the algorithm what it exactly is doing when it's adding those pixels.
There are programs, if I'm right, are there programs that would just default it blue, even though it might not be?
I do not know.
Do you know if there's programs that would take the blue pixel and the red pixel, combine them, and make a color purple when it's actually not purple?
I do not know.
Does it change? So here's the question I have for you. So if blow it up, it's going to add pixels, so it might change. The pixels could become white for the color of my shirt or black for the color of my tie, correct?
It's going to be sampling the pixels that from your example,
Yeah.
and and calculating those pixels out, and then duplicating those pixels into that image.
Can you do that again? What was your answer?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat your question?
I'll try. So what we're doing here, what you've done is you've taken a still photograph, right?
Yes.
You've blown it up and added pixels to that photograph.
That is correct.
Okay. Those pixels have to contain or do contain information, right?
That is correct.
Some of that information is color, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so if the best example I would give you is if you take a picture of my chest, my shirt, and you blow it up, you're going to be adding pixels around my shirt and my tie, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so the question is this. In terms of the accuracy of that enlarged image, you don't know whether those pixels are black for my tie or white for my shirt, right?
I cannot speak to the algorithm that's being used and how it's interpreting it.
And that, to be fair, that could distort or not make an accurate picture of what we're seeing, right?
It's possible.
Right. So the images, and when we're looking at smaller images that are blown up, adding color that's not actually there can make the photograph not accurate, right?
But all the steps that were taken are repeatable.
So what does that have to do with the fact that you don't know what the colors are added? You don't know the colors that are added, so how do you know that's accurate?
I do not know to the algorithm and how it's using it.
So when we're doing that on small images, like a marker in my hand or something like that, and you want to see what this is from a far distance away, it might be adding color that's not actually there, right?
It may be.
So the image that we're asking people to look at might not actually be an accurate representation of the original image. True?
It's possible.
Would it take something that was present? So the example I gave you was my tie. Right? If you expand that, is it going to add more black pixels?
It will add, no, it will not add any more detail than what is originally there.
But it's going to add pixels, you just don't know what color they're going to be.
Correct.
Is it more difficult to do that in situations where you're further away, meaning the distance from the photograph? The further the distance from the photograph, the more difficult it is, or the more pixels that need to be added to blow it up, right?
You're saying more distant from the photograph, you mean the object depicted?
Sorry, yep. So the object depicted in the photograph, the further away that is, the more pixels need to be added when you enlarge it, right?
Correct, if you wanted to enlarge it, yes.
And the more pixels that are added, the more availability there is for distortion in terms of the color in those pixels, correct?
In terms of the color, it's possible.
And would that be also true? Would that be true for the size? I think I asked you this, but I'm trying to figure this out. The size of the image that you're trying to make larger. So the bigger the image in the photograph, the easier it is to enlarge.
There's more information. There's more pixels that are present to enlarge in that area.
Okay. So if I, for example, if I had something on my clothing and you enlarged it, would that make the thing on my clothing more pronounced?
It may not, no.
Would it make it less pronounced?
It may not.
It may keep it the same even though the photograph is bigger?
It does not, interpolation does not add detail. So if you are enlarging something on your clothing, all it's doing is making that image larger. The detail that may or may not be there is not added. You're not adding additional detail to that image.
You're just adding unknown information.
Yes. No, you're not adding unknown information. You're adding, you're interpolating those pixels, and you're adding those particular pixels.
Right, and those pixels contain information,
Yes.
and that information contains color,
Yes.
and you're not sure whether or not how that color scheme works in that situation, right?
I do not know.
Okay. Sir, thanks for your time.
Mr. Kraus?
Do these programs add detail?
These programs do not add detail.
And how long did you work with this drone video, all told?
All told, I received it on Sunday, and I finished all my work with regards to these requests as of yesterday.
So you worked on it for more than 3 days?
Correct.
Would you have submitted a exhibit that did not seem to be consistent with the original footage?
Objection, argumentative. And foundational.
It is argumentative.
Did you make sure that if the reports that you identified were not consistent with the drone footage that you become familiar with, would you have produced them?
I would not have produced them if there was any information in there that did not seem accurate to me.
So you do compare it to the original?
I did not compare it to the original in this instance, no.
And what is this sampling that you talk about?
The bicubic and smart resize.
Yes.
Those are two different algorithms that use to interpolate that information.
So do these algorithms look at, so let me ask it this way. On a digital photograph, to make it bigger, do you have to add pixels?
You do have to add pixels, yes.
So if I take a photo from my phone and I want it on a 5x7, I'd be adding pixels to it.
You would be.
So this is something that's commonly done to photographs.
It is, yes.
Now, these algorithms, how do they know, to the best of your knowledge, how to add the pixels?
To my best of my knowledge, it depends on the algorithm, and that's the extent of my expertise on that.
So what is the sampling process?
The sampling process is looking at the pixels and providing more data to that file.
So it looks at the pixels and looks at what's around it, and that's how it adds the pixels.
That is correct.
So it's not just arbitrarily choosing colors to put in.
Not to my knowledge.
Nothing further, thank you.
Sir, you never compared the photograph in front of you to the original? That's what you testified to?
I did not compare the original. I did my analysis on the original video, but I didn't compare them side by side, no.
Well, you were asked, you wouldn't submit it if you didn't think it was a fair and accurate representation and all that other stuff, right?
Right.
But you never looked at the two of them next to each other to confirm that, right?
To confirm that, to compare the original to the exported file, no.
And I know Mr. Krause talked about, you take a photograph of your family or whatever and you make it bigger. Right? you're probably not as concerned in a family photograph that you're adding pixels and where colors are going as you might be in, for example, say, a homicide investigation, right?
That is true.
Okay? So making sure that the information that's added to these pictures, and the information is in the pixels, making sure that's accurate, that's an important part of your responsibilities, correct?
That would be yes.
And you don't know how that happens in this particular case, correct?
I do not know the algorithm that's being used within the software to speak to that, no.
That's all I have, Judge.
Any question?
How do you know that the interpolation is accurate?
Just based off the fact that it's a bicubic algorithm is a common algorithm that is used, and it's a sound forensic tool within AND5.
And how long did you work with this drone video and the different images from it?
It's been asked and answered.
It's sustained.
Do you know how many hours you worked on it?
I would say it was approximately approximately 20 hours.
Nothing further.
Question?
I don't.
You may step down, sir.
We have no further rebuttal witnesses.
Any other evidence?
Judge, I would move that the exhibits be accepted and published as previously requested.
Any objection?
The same objection that I noted.
All right. It'll be received and published. Did you have some for publication too, or was that done? That was completed?
Yes.
Okay. All right then. Folks, the evidence is closed, and I'm going to ask that you return to my, yes, you do. Go ahead.
Can we get the screens on?
Did you? Hey.
This is exhibit 155. And now please exhibit 156. Claim it? All right, that's all. Thank you, Judge.
All right. All right, folks, the evidence is closed. And you know what? I want to talk to you lawyers for a moment. I guess I'll ask you to step into the library for just a second. And please don't talk about the case. All right, now, you have driven me into submission with your request to argue on Monday, but I'm going to extract something in exchange, which is a cap on the length of your arguments. I figure, well, first of all, we're going to do a more involved discussion on instructions and verdicts. Are there going to be any charges submitted to the jury other than what is in the information? Yes?
The state will ask for that, yes.
How many additional charges are you going to submit? Or request to submit?
I'm not sure if we finalized our request. Certainly on count 3 and 4, I think we can discuss on other counts, but the first degree homicide, first degree intentional homicide, we will ask for all lesser includeds. The attempted homicide to engage gross rights, we would ask for I believe there's only one lesser included. We are not inclined to ask for lesser includeds on the reckless endangering safety charges. At this moment, we're not inclined to ask for lesser includeds on count 1 to Mr. Rosenbaum, but I think we need to discuss that more fully.
Okay. Are there going to be any special instructions other than what you've already submitted and the 6th count affirmative defense instruction from either side?
I believe the state will be asking, we got to discuss this more, but I believe we'll be asking for the provocation instruction. 805, I believe.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, the reason I'm asking right now, I'm not going to hold you to this, is that I figure that the instruction probably will take 45 minutes, I would think.
To read them to the jury?
Yeah.
Yes, I would say.
I would say easily.
And so that leaves how much of the day, since you scared me off from tomorrow because you said, well, the jury will be worn out by the time we get there. So I think, well, I don't want to wear them out on Monday either. So if I'm going to be instructing them for 45 minutes or an hour, that takes us to 10, 10:30, 10:15 anyway, 10:30. So maybe if you were going to confine your arguments to maybe an hour and a half apiece, is that reasonable?
Very.
I'd request.
Total time.
Including rebuttal?
Yeah. Total time.
The state is going to need 2 hours for our primary and I'd say half an hour for rebuttal, Your Honor.
You know, I had the good fortune to be across the street neighbor, living across the street to the late Kenneth Grube, United States District Judge, when I was a lad. And Judge Grube is famous for his statement that the brain cannot absorb what the seat cannot endure. And if you don't like that advice, President Roosevelt, one of the renowned speakers of the 30s and 40s, when asked by his son for some advice on speaking, said, be sincere, be brief, and be seated. And so the message is loud and clear. Are you saying 2.5 hours to argue your case?
I'm saying that I think that the initial closing may take up to 2 hours. I'm not going to aim for 2 hours, Your Honor. Obviously, I understand that, but I want to have the freedom. There are a lot of videos, and we're going to be showing them. So there's going to need to be time for that. It's not just going to be standing up droning for 2 hours, but there's going to be time when we're going to need several minutes, I don't even know, probably 30 minutes worth of video that they may be watching at various times, which no one's going to be talking. It'll just be playing that. And I certainly don't want to be in a situation where our allotted time for closings, you propose an hour and a half, for example, we do an hour and 10 minutes or whatever to save 20 for rebuttal. I can't possibly budget rebuttal time because I don't know what the rebuttal is going to be. So I'd like that, we can put a cap of 30 minutes or something on it, but I don't want that to come out of the first closing period of time, and I don't want to be limited. I don't want to have to budget that right now out of that first closing time. So if the court is disinclined to go along with that, then I would propose an hour and a half for our primary closing, an hour and a half for the defense, and then a maximum of 30 minutes for rebuttal.
They should get no more time than us.
Well, they won't.
Okay.
They won't.
Whatever the time
No.
the court says,
Yeah.
I'll deal with it. I think an hour and a half is adequate.
I agree with you that, and you make a good point about the number of exhibits, and so I'm going to indulge total time of 2.5 hours each side. But with that, I'm usually pretty permissive when people go a little bit longer than they should. I note it to the jury so that the jurors can make their own, if they get annoyed, they get annoyed. But I just warn the people, but I'm going to be a little bit tougher, and I may tell you to just sit down in mid-sentence if it keeps going. No, seriously. And I did it to one of your, one of the DAs that in the last several sequences, and mid-sentence. So 2.5 hours per side, and yours is to allocate as you wish. So we need to come back tomorrow. Tonight, you may send me your proposals for lesser included and any special instructions or the numbers of those you want. Well, let's get the jurors in, then we'll take care of these details. Yeah. Okay, folks, the evidence is closed, and we're going to break for the weekend at this point. The lawyers and I have some work to do tomorrow and to get the case ready for you on Monday, and then I'm going to ask that you return at 9 o'clock on Monday. Even though the evidence is closed, it's still not appropriate for you to discuss anything about the case with anybody, not even with members of your household, not even with other jurors. Even if all 12 of you, all 18 of you are in the same place at the same time, you still can't talk about the case. And when you get back on Monday, you can't talk about the case until you've heard my final instructions regarding our law, which will take, I hope, less than an hour. I think that that will be true. I think that probably closer to 45 minutes or even a little less maybe. And then we will hear the arguments of the attorneys, and they have graciously agreed that they will not exceed 2.5 hours in duration each, and may be less than that. And so it'll take a good share of Monday. And then the case will be put, well, then the procedure will be that we'll use that tumbler over there, and we'll draw out names of as many jurors as are necessary to get down to 12. And then that'll be our jury that will go into deliberation. And then what happens after that is up to you folks. Any questions about this at all? We're in the final stretch. Please follow the instructions. And don't read, watch, or listen to any account of the trial. And enjoy the weekend, and have a wonderful evening.
Somebody will meet with them upstairs.
I'm sorry?
When you said you wanted any sort of lesser included or anything like that, do you want us to give you the full draft or just the number?
If it's just if it's standard, just give the number.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else you need from us, Judge?
No.
What time do you want us back?
How about do you have anything else tomorrow?
No, I took everything else out.
Okay, 10 a.m. Okay,
Thank you.
great.